In mathematics, the equal sign is like a scale that is balanced. So something what is on the left side is equal or balanced to something on the right side. The value that we have on the left side is equal to the value that we have on the right side. So the value, which is the weight of this apple on the left side, is the same as the value or the weight that we have on the right side of this scale. So the left and the right side does not have to look the same, but their values has to be equal. So the weight of this apple is 5 ounces, and the average apple is around 3 to 7 ounces. So let's say we have here apple, which weight is 5 ounces, and that's equal on the right side. We have a weight of 5 ounces here. So when we're talking about the equation is a sentence which says that one expression is equal to another expression. So here we have expression 2 plus 10, and we are saying that this is equal as the expression 2 times 6. So here what we have to do is we have to evaluate these expressions. So 2 plus 10 is 12, as well as 2 times 6 is also 12. So we see that the value on the left side equals the value on the right side. In algebra, solving equations means finding the value of a missing number in an equation. So in algebra, we'll have an case where on one side we have an unknown value, unknown or missing number, right? On the other side, on the right side here, we have expression 2 times 6, which we can evaluate because 2 times 6 equals 12, right? But this 2 plus unknown number we can evaluate. So what we want to find out is what is the value of this variable x, or what is the value of missing number. So what we can do here is we can use reasoning and say, okay, 2 plus something equals 12, right? And that something is 10, because we know that 2 plus 10 gives us a value of 12. So that's something that we are familiar with, like when we were learning in maybe first grade, these addition facts, right? So we were learning that 2 plus 10 equals 12, right? Also, we're learning like 12 minus 10 equals 2, and so on. And here we were supposed to fill in the blanks. 2 plus what equals 12, right? That's one way of doing it. Other way of solving or finding the value of this missing number in an equation is that we can take what we know from both sides and trying to keep the scale in balance. So here, first of all, we will evaluate this or simplify this to have a value of 12. And then we can take 2 from both sides, right? We can take from both sides, we can take 2 away. And here we will have only x on one side equals 12 minus 2 is 10. So the unknown number or missing number here is 10. So the goal would be to isolate or have the variable or unknown value on one side of the equation of the equal side, and on the other side to have a number, right, or known value. Here, for example, we have on one side of equation we have x minus 1, and that equals 6. So we have equation x minus 1 equals 6. So how do we solve this equation? So if we want to see this visually, right, we can see that on one side we have some unknown value x, and we are taking 1 unit away from this unknown value, right? So we have here I'm missing 1 unit. On the other side we have 6, units, right? Each of these units is worth 1, right? So this is one unit. Now, if we want to reason here, right, we can say that we have unknown number, we are taking 1 away from it, and we will get 6. So what we can do is we can go and reverse and say, okay, now if after we're taking 1 away we have 6, we will reach the unknown number if we go backwards and add 1 or give 1 back to 6 that we have left, right? So we will arrive that the unknown value then must be 7, because 7 take away 1 equals 6. But we want to follow the way how we solve these equations in algebra, because when these equation becomes more complex, then this is not going to be the easy way of solving them. So in other words, we can say that here we can put 1 unit back and have the complete unknown value to be x, right? We give 1 unit back to it, so we have completed the 1 whole x on one side, and we have to keep this scale in balance, which means we have to put 1 unit on the right side also. So now we again have the scale in balance. And that means that now we have on one side only x, and on the other side now we have 7 units instead of 6. So what we did is we add 1 unit on both sides. We add 1 unit on both sides. So we have x minus 1, we add 1, and we add 1 on the other side. Now we simplify what we have. So x, take away 1, add 1 back, that's 0. And here we have 6 plus 1 equals 7. So the solution is x equals 7. Here we have equation x plus 2 equals 6. Again, if we have a number, we add 2 to it, right? We get 6. Right? Now we can use the reverse operation and say, okay, we have 6, we added 2, now we're going to subtract 2 in order to get what is the unknown number, right? So 6 minus 2 is 4, and that equals x. Yes. Also, what we can see here, on one side of the scale, we have x and 2 units. And on the other side, on the right side, we have 6 units. Now, what we can do to isolate only x or unknown value on one side, we can take 2 units away. So if we do this on the left side, we have to do the same thing on the right side. We'll take 2 away from it. So we will have that x is in balance with 4 units on the right side. So that is also the solution to the equation x equals 4. Now we can add something which is called equivalent equations. What does it mean when two equations are equivalent? We have x equals 3 units, right? So x is balancing 3 units on the other side. What is going to happen if we add or we multiply by 2? Right? If we multiply by 2, what we have on the left side, so we'll have 2x's, and here we'll have 6 units. So what we did, we multiply by 2 both sides, and then we get the equivalent, equation, which is 2x equals 6. So x equals 3 is equation, and it is equivalent to 2x equals 6. Now, if we have another equation which says on the left side we have 2x's, and that equals 8 units. So that means we have 2x equals 8. Now that will be equivalent to x equals 4. Why? Because if we divide it by 2 both sides, or take away here half of it, right? Divide by 2, so we have only one x, and the right side we're going to divide by 2, so we'll divide it into 2 groups, which means we'll take away one group. So on one side we have x, on the other side we have 4. So these two are equivalent equations, right? And here, what if we have 2x plus 3 equals 9? On one side we have 2 x's and 3 units, and on the other side we have 9 units. So now we're going to try to isolate x and have only one x on one side of the equation and some value on the right side of the equation. So how can we isolate x on one side? So first of all, let's get rid of these units, right? So let's take away 3 units on one side, which means we have to take 3 units away from the right side also. And here, when we're writing in algebraic way here, that means that we actually took away 3 units from both sides, right? We took -3 on one side, and we have 9 -3 on the right side. So we took 3 away from both sides. Now we're going to simplify before we move forward. So that is 2x, and then plus 3 minus 3, that equals 0, equals 9 minus 3 is 6. Well, that's what we see on the picture now. We have 2 x's on the left side, and we have 6 units on the right side. Now we have 2 x's here. We want to have only one x, which means we can divide by 2, right? We can divide by 2. That means we will divide it into 2 groups. In each group we will have one x, right? So we are dividing by 2, and we will divide by 2 the right side also. So we have 6 units. We will have 2 groups of 3. So both sides we're getting rid of one group. Both sides we have 2 groups, which means we're dividing by 2, or we are getting rid of one group on both sides. And on this side that will look like we're dividing both sides by 2. So 2 and 2 will cancel out. So we have x equals 6 divided by 2 is 3. That's what we have on the picture. 2 x's, we're dividing into 2 groups. In each group we'll have one x, and on the right side we'll have 3 units. Okay, now we're going to solve some equations here. Let's start with this equation here. 8 minus 5x equals 2x plus 22. So this is something on the left side equals a value on the right side. Now we can notice here that on both sides we have unknown value. On left and the right side we have x, which is something we don't know. And what we want to do is we want to have only one x on one side of our equation, and on the other side we want to have a number. Now what we can do is we can subtract 2 x's from both sides, right? And then on one side we will eliminate 2 x's, right? And we will have only x on one side. So let's subtract 2 x's from both sides. So in this case we will have 8 minus 5x, and then we're subtracting 2x from this side, equals, right side says 2x plus 22, and we are subtracting 2x from it. Now before we move on, first we're going to simplify. On one side we have 8, and then we have minus 5x minus 2x. That will be minus 7x equals 2x minus 2x is 0, so we'll have only 22 on this side. Now we have unknown value only on one side. Good. Now what we want to do is we want to isolate it, so we need to get rid of the 8 here. So how are we going to get rid of 8? We're going to subtract 8 from both sides. Right? So here we will have 8 minus 8, that's going to be 0. So we have negative 7x equals 22 minus 8, which is 14. Now we have negative 7x equals 14. Now we want to have only x here, which means we have negative 7x's on one side, right? So that means we're going to divide it by negative 7 to have a negative 7 groups of 1x in it. And that means that the right side we have to divide into the negative 7, right? So we will divide by negative 7 both sides. So we'll have on one side x, and the other side 14 divided by negative 7, which is negative 2. So this solution is x equals negative. So that will be one way of doing it, to take 2x from one side, right, to get rid of the unknown on one side of the equation. But we could have choose to add 5x on one side, this side, and have unknown on the right side. Doesn't have to be on left side, right? So in this case here, we have 8 minus 5x, and then we are adding 5x on this side. And on the other side, we have 2x plus 22, and we are adding 5x, right? We are adding 5x on both sides. Before we move on, first we're going to simplify. So we have 8, and then minus 5x plus 5x, that's 0. Then equal 2x plus 5x is 7x plus 22. Right? So now we want to isolate x, which means we have to get rid of plus 22 on this side, which means we're going to subtract 22 from both sides. So here we're going to have 8 minus 22 equals 7x plus 22 minus 22, that's 0. Before we move on, we're going to simplify. 8 minus 22 is negative 14 equals 7x. Now we want to isolate only one x, which means we're going to divide it into 7 groups, and each group is going to be 1x. We have to do on the left side the same thing, divide it into 7 groups. So now we have negative 14 divided by 7 is negative 2, and on the other side is 7 divided by 7 is 1. We have 1x. So x equals negative 2. So we get the same result as the first time. So it doesn't matter from which side you want to get rid of the unknown, the variable, right? You can do it from left, or you can get rid of x from on the right side. Now here we have 4x plus 7 equals x plus 10. Now again, we have x on both sides of the equation, and we want to have it only on one side. So in this case, let's think about it. If we want to get rid of 4x on one side, right, and we subtract minus 4x on both sides, so we'll have on this side, we'll have x minus 4x, but we'll have negative 3x. So maybe we don't want to deal with negative. 3x. We want to have a positive value in front of x. So it will be easier actually to get rid of x from the right side here, right? So it will be much easier to say let's subtract x from both sides, right? So here we will have 4x plus 7 minus x, and on the other side is x plus 10 minus x. Now, before we move on, we're going to simplify. So here we have 4x minus x. That's going to give us 3x. And then we have plus 7 equals x minus x is 0. So we only have here plus 10 left, positive 10 left. Now the next step is we want to reach x on one side, which means now we want to subtract 7 from both sides. We want to get rid of the 7 on one side, right? So we will have 3x plus 7 minus 7 equals 10 minus 7. So here we're going to have 3x plus 7 minus 7, that's 0, equals 10 minus 7 is 3. Now we have 3x equals 3. Now we want to divide by 3 both sides. And we can cancel these two and we'll have x equals 3 divided by 3 is 1. So x equals, here we have 11 minus 4x equals x plus 16. In this case, we want to have x only on one side. Now, what will be easier to deal with? Can we add 4x on both sides and get rid of x on the left side? Or we're going to subtract x on both sides and get rid of the x on the right side. So if you don't like to deal with negatives, then we can add on both sides, right? So let's add 4x on both sides. So we have here 11 minus 4x plus 4x. And on the other side, we're going to have x plus 16 plus 4x. Before we move on, we're going to simplify. So here we have 11 minus x plus x is 0. That equals x plus 4 x's. We have 5 x's altogether and plus 16. Now we want to get rid of the 16. So we're going to subtract 16 from both sides. 11 minus 16. And here we have 5x plus 16 minus 16. 11 minus 16, that's negative 5, equals 5x plus 16 minus 16, that's 0. Now we want to divide by 5. So we are dividing whatever is next to x because we want to have x by itself. So we can cancel these out, right? So we're dividing both sides by 5, and then negative 5 divided by 5 is negative 1 equals x. So the solution is unknown value x equals negative. And then here we have 6a plus 7 equals 4a plus 7. So we don't have to deal always with x. We can use any other letter of the alphabet here. So again, before we start eliminating a variable on one of the sides of the equation, we can think about it which would be easier to subtract or add, right? So if we subtract 6a, we will get rid of the variable on the left side, but on the right side, we're going to have 4a minus 6a, which will give us negative 2a. So it will be much easier to subtract 4a on both sides. So we're not going to go into a negative. So let's do that. So here we have 6a plus 7 minus 4a equals 4a plus 7 minus 4a. So we are subtracting 4a from both sides. Now, before we move on, always simplify. So 6a minus 4a, that will give us 2a plus 7 equals 4a minus 4a, that's 0. And then on this side we have 7. Now, in order to reach a, first we have to get rid of this plus 7, right? So we're going to subtract 7 from both sides. So 2a plus 7 minus 7 equals 7 minus 7. So now on left side we have 2a plus 7 minus 7 is 0 equals 7 minus 7 is 0. So now we have 2a equals 0. So we can say we are dividing by any number that's next to a in order to get only a on one side, right? And we get 2 and 2 cross out, so a equals 0 divided by 2 is 0. Or we can say we have 2a equals 0, and the only time when we have multiplication and the product is 0 is if one of the factors is 0. So one of the factors has to be 0 in order for a product to be 0. So we can conclude here that a must be equal 0. We can do it like that, but we can do like this. Keep solving the same way as we were solving the previous equations.